It gives me great pleasure to introduce our next guest because I was actually there when he got his first taste of politics with Senator Helms in 1995. Since then, David Rouzer has gone on to help develop the tobacco buyout legislation for Senator Helms and Senator Elizabeth Dole, completed a successful North Carolina State Senate career before being elected to Congress in 2014. David currently serves on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the Agriculture Committee. Please welcome Congressman David Rouzer.
Well, thank you very much, John, for that introduction. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. It's kind of like homecoming. Nancy, so good to see you. I was a very fortunate guy. I had the opportunity to get to know Senator Helms quite well and Miss Dot. And if there was ever any question of who the real conservative in the family was, Nancy can assure you it was Dot Helms. And in fact, Helms told me one time, he said, "You know where I get all my good ideas from?" I said, "No, Senator." He said, "Dot." But it's so great to be here with each of you. Let me also say that we are very fortunate as a state to have two United States Senators of the caliber of Richard Burr and Tom Tillis. We are really, really fortunate. I've known Senator Burr since the first time I started walking around on the Hill looking for a job. And a lot of people don't know my story perhaps, but I was an ag econ, and chemistry major at NC State. And I was in through the Fund for American Studies, which Art Pope is a big part of. I was in a program over in Prague, the Czech Republic, my senior year at NC State. And my roommate was from Romania. I grew up his entire life behind the Iron Curtain. And it struck me that he and all the others that were part of the program, they understood America and its purpose and its history and its founding a whole lot better than we did. But the other thing that struck me was, if you don't have your politics right, nothing else works very well either. And so in that December of 1994, I graduated from NC State. Of course, there was a Republican wave that November that brought in Richard Burr and many others to the Congress, where we took control of the House of Representatives for the first time in 40 years. Senator Helms became chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And so I went up to D.C. I didn't really know anybody. I started knocking on doors. And Senator Burr's door is actually one that I knocked on. He was a brand new House member, of course. And I remember him telling me, he said, "David," he said, "I don't have anything available in my office, but," he said, "I'll call around for you." And he called his buddy, Don Latham, and said, "Hey," he said, "I got a fella here in front of me. He's a diamond in the rough." And now, I think, if you look back at my career, I don't know about the diamond part, but I was definitely in the rough. And but anyhow, I was very, very fortunate to land a job with Senator Helms, and what a great Senate family we had. It was really, really such a special work environment, a special place. Everybody was there for the right reasons. Everybody was there because they believed in what Senator Helms believed in. And a lot of offices on Capitol Hill, unfortunately, don't have that kind of atmosphere, don't have that kind of family connection. And in many cases, a lot of those offices, many of the staffers don't really realize why they're there. But we all, each one of us in the Helms, on the Helms team, on the Helms Senate family, we understood why we were there, because we understood that without the right policies in place, we could lose this great country. That what we have here is very, very precious, but it's also very, very fragile. And I personally, and I have said this a number of times publicly, I personally believe that Donald Trump's election was God giving the United States of America a second chance. Sometimes God uses a blunt instrument to make the change that he needs. The next president will probably be a scalpel, very carefully crafted. Which, by the way, if you think about it, Mike Pence fits that perfectly. And so I think we are living in a very, very exciting time. And as down as things may seem from time to time, I like to remind people it could be a whole lot worse. Hillary Clinton could be president. We would not have Justice Gorsuch on the Supreme Court. And we wouldn't be talking about repealing 22 rules for every new regulation that's put in place, I can assure you. Things would be a lot different. And so we need to look at things from the perspective of the total picture, reality, throughout world history. Without this country, the world is a very, very dark place. And that's why it's so important that we do everything to keep it. Now, along those lines, I'm going to drill down on a couple topics that you don't always hear a lot about from this perspective. But I have a general philosophy that kind of fits with the committees that I serve on. I'm on the House Agriculture Committee. I'm on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee as well. Two great committees that do a lot of tremendous work. But I've always believed that if you have the right agriculture policy in place, where you can feed yourself and the rest of the world, you're in a very dominant position. If you have the right energy policies in place where you can provide the energy for yourself and the rest of the world, you're in a very dominant position. And if you have the right infrastructure policies in place where you can get products from point A to point B in a timely, effective, efficient manner, you're in a very dominant place. A couple other topics that are critically important to all this too: trade. Very, very important. And then the regulatory regime, the regulatory environment. One of the things I'm most proud of from my time serving in the state legislature was I chaired the Joint Regulatory Reform Committee. We had just won the state Senate for the first time since, what was it, 1873 maybe? Anyhow, it's been a long, long time between 1873 and 2010. Art said he wasn't around. I think Strom Thurmond was there, though. But we made some significant reforms at the state level. And I remember we had our organizational conference, and Senator Berger was there, and Tom Tillis, newly elected to the Speaker of the House, was there. And one of the items that I brought up, I said, in all my time working for Senator Helms, Elizabeth Dole, in the Bush administration, everywhere I have ever gone, we like to talk a lot about spending, we like to talk a lot about taxes, but the thing that is killing everybody are all these rules and regulations, one on top of the other. It's the next straw that breaks the back. And when the president came out with his executive order and directive for every new rule, an agency must dispose of 2 other rules, I love that. Because guess what? That was one of my bills when I was in the state legislature. For every new rule, there had to be 2 removed. And of course now we're doing even better than that, thanks to President Trump and his team. For every new rule or regulation, they're actually repealing 22, 23 rules, regulations. I liken rules and regulations, quite frankly, to that closet where you have stored all these boxes over time. We all have that closet in our house. Maybe it's the attic, maybe it's the garage. My mom and dad's place is the garage. I think my mom's going to kill him if he doesn't clean it out. But the fact of the matter is you have all these boxes, all this material that's stored up. And that's basically what our regulatory environment is today. It's a myriad of boxes stacked on top of each other. And every once in a while, it's important to go and clean it out and start over. And that's what American enterprise, American business has been struggling with for so long. I personally think that a big part of the stock market increase the past year or so before tax reform was all the great work that was being done on the regulatory side. That is just such a key cornerstone component. Going back to agriculture and energy, we've got a farm bill on the table right now. A lot of people don't think about where your food comes from, but I tell you what, we would all be thinking about it if there were 300 million hungry people in this country. We think that we get up every day and have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we don't think a whole lot about it. But the fact of the matter is we have the most affordable, most abundant food supply because of the policies that we've had in place at the national level to provide a safety net for our farm families. But I have to tell you, and a lot of people don't realize this, right now, farm income is down 52% over the last 4 or 5 years. There's been about a 33% increase in the number of bankruptcies in agriculture just the last couple years. Things are tight. Things are tough. About 2/3 of our nation's farms are in real economic trouble. And that's real hard data. So it's really critically important that we get this farm bill across the finish line. The House reported out a very good farm bill that includes critical reforms to food stamps. And I'm going to talk about that because I think it's really important for you to know what we're doing in the House of Representatives. You talk about a $20 trillion debt, $21 trillion debt, and how you drive that down. As Senator Burr alluded to, the structure of these programs, particularly the entitlement programs, are what drive the debt. 85% of the increase of the debt is directly attributable to 70% of the federal budget, which is entitlement spending. And what is that? You've got Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Food stamps is a part of that. You've got a number of folks that are sitting on food stamps and have been sitting on food stamps, what's also known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Been on it for 8 years or more. In fact, if you go back and you look at the same time period where you had the exact same level of unemployment in the year 2000, there were about 17 million people on food stamps. Right now, today, there are about 44, 48 million people on food stamps. So that tells you there is a problem that needs to be addressed. You would think that the Farm Bill, 80% of it would be farm programs. It's not. It's food stamps. Only about 25% of the total Farm Bill spending related to it is related to agriculture in one form or the other. The rest of it, the other 75-80%, is food stamps. And so what we do is we say if you are able-bodied and you can work, we require you to work at least 20 hours a week if you're going to remain on food stamps. And if you cannot find a job, we are going to pay for you to have the job training necessary so that you can find your way into an employment and ultimately a very rewarding career. Now, let me tell you something. This is coming at a good time if we can get this done. With unemployment at 3.9%, you got roughly, as I understand it, about 6.1 million jobs out there that need to be filled. When you have a growing economy of 2.5%, 3.5% GDP, you're going to create jobs. Well, guess what? You got to have the workers to fill those jobs. There's two things I hear from employers all the time when they come and visit with me. Number one is, David, we can't find workers that can pass the drug test. And then the number two issue, they say, when we do find workers that can pass the drug test, they don't have the skill set that we need in order to employ them. So that's what this is all about. I was asked the other day, well, isn't this just great for employers? I said, yes, it will be good for employers. But what excites me more about it is the change that we can help make in individuals' lives. A job, a growing economy, and marriage are the best anti-poverty programs out there. They really are. Because when you have a job and you have the opportunity to grow and develop your God-given talents, lead you to a very rewarding career, what that does for the self-worth of an individual, that's what's really special about this. Not just the numbers and the economics of it and growing the economy. That's great, and we got to do it. We need to do it. But it's that personal growth of that individual, being able to tap into their God-given talents. And without that incentive, without that push, a lot of people don't have the opportunity to experience that. They get stuck in this cycle. And that's why you've got so many people still sitting on food stamps. So many more than in the year 2000 when the unemployment rate was exactly the same. So that's what this is about. That's what we're trying to achieve in the House. We're going to have a close vote. We're not going to have one Democrat vote for it. Unfortunately, they oppose every single thing that we're trying to do in this welfare reform, in this food stamp reform as part of the Farm Bill. So we're going to have to find a super majority of Republicans in order to get the votes to get this thing across the finish line. Good farm policy is important for a number of reasons, but a lot of people don't realize this one. All those other countries out there, they subsidize their agriculture to the hilt. And China is one big bad actor in that regard. In fact, a lot of people don't realize it. In fact, I didn't realize this until I was double-checking my facts. In China, they exceed their subsidy limit by $100 billion on 3 crops alone in just one single year. You know what that's equivalent to? That's equivalent to roughly 8 years of U.S. farm support for our farmers. $100 billion on 3 crops alone in one single year. So you've got all these other countries out there that are undercutting our American farmers. And so we've got to have a good, strong safety net for them. We've got to be opening up new markets, which brings me to trade. Trade is critically important to agriculture. In fact, if you don't have markets overseas, if you don't have free trade agreements in place where we're shipping our product to other countries, our farm families and our rural communities wouldn't stand a chance, because it's that export, it's that extra market that enables them to be able to make a profit and enables them to keep moving and to stay afloat. So trade is incredibly important. And I was very fortunate and honored to have the opportunity to visit with the president at the White House just the other week. A little round table we had. There were about 4 House members, 4 senators, 4 or 5 governors, mostly from the Midwest. And we talked about trade. We talked about NAFTA. We talked about the importance of these international markets. We talked about the importance of trade as it relates to building those strong ties and sharing American values. You know, China, I personally believe, is going to be our long-term adversary for a variety of reasons. And if you go to other countries around the world, you have basically what I would call a silent invasion, where you have the Chinese coming in with their propaganda. They're trying to subvert, do everything possible they can to get a leg up. And a lot of people forget this, but Senator Helms made it clear when he was in office. You have to remember, China's communist. Their values are not our values. Never have been, never will be. They do not believe, certainly in the same things that we do. And they are out there doing everything they can to exert as much influence economically and militarily as possible. I think this president understands that. And when word came out of the White House a few weeks ago, about a month or so ago, as it relates to tariffs and pursuing our trade negotiations a little bit differently, there's a little bit of angst in the agriculture community because so much of our product goes to China, goes to Japan, goes to Mexico, Canada, elsewhere. And my advice to our farmers in my district that called me about it, I said, look, China's been eating our lunch for a long time. And quite frankly, I wish that we'd had an American president who pursued a get tough strategy 25 years ago, and we wouldn't be in this shape now. We got to do it sooner. We got to do it sooner rather than later. We can't just wait around and do things the same old way. They'll not only be eating our lunch, they'll be eating our breakfast and our dinner too. Their intellectual property theft, everybody knows about it. They lie, cheat, and steal every chance they get. And they can manipulate just about every market out there, and they do whenever they have that opportunity. And so I appreciate the president's approach, and I told my guys, I said, look, hang tough and keep cool. And I think things are going to work out for the better in the long run. And we talked about that at the round table, and the president made that point. He said, we can't continue down this path that we've been going. We've got to take a very different approach, and he firmly believes that his approach will work. There's no lack of confidence with this president, that's for sure. But you know what? You can't argue with his record so far. In fact, I had a couple of constituents that were in my office a few weeks ago, or I guess a month or so ago, whenever he was talking about his red button being bigger than Kim Jong-un's red button and all that, stirred folks up a little bit. And they came in, they were a little agitated about it, and they asked me what I thought, and I said, it doesn't bother me at all. And then they kind of looked at me stunned, and they said, well, why is that? I said, because quite frankly, the way I see it, the crazier Kim Jong-un thinks that Donald Trump is, the safer we all are. And I think that applies to every tyrant out there, every dictator out there. You know, it gives you a tremendous amount of leverage when your opposition has no idea what you're willing to do. You know, every preceding president, they knew they weren't going to do anything. This president, and I have no doubt that Pompeo went over there and said, look, we don't get this thing right. You know, I'm working for a crazy man. There's no telling what'll happen. That's tremendous leverage. It's brilliant. Unconventional, yes. Maybe stirs people up a little bit, yes. But it's brilliant. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But I think you have to look at this administration, like the president said, and this president through a very different prism, through a very different lens. Energy. If you don't have energy, you don't have prosperity. No energy, no prosperity. It's that simple. I like to try to put things in simple terms. I represent a coastal district. I'm told that I'm probably the only coastal member in Congress that is publicly in favor of offshore. I look at things from a 20, 30-year, 50-year perspective. You know, a lot of the experts tell me that they believe that 90% of what might be off the Atlantic is natural gas. If that's true, North Carolina could be one of the centers for the energy future for a long time to come. And every mayor and every concerned citizen that I have on the coast, there's two things they talk to me about: the beach renourishment and dredging of those inlets and waterways. And guess what? With entitlement spending at 70% of the total federal budget today, if Congress doesn't make some changes there, it's going to be 80, 85, 90% of the total federal budget in about 20, 25 years. Well, that'd be about the time, if we do have something out there, where there can be a real revenue shot in the arm through revenue sharing from anything that we may have offshore to take care of our infrastructure in this state, take care of our beaches, our inlets, and our waterways, and not to mention all the jobs that it could create, and be a great part of the energy future for not only this country, but for the world. One of the things that I learned from Senator Helms is don't duck and hide and run from a tough issue, even if it's politically unpopular, as this is in some areas of my district. But go out and sell it. Go out and lean into it and sell it and explain the other side of the story. I think that is what Congress suffers from today more than anything else, because people have put their faith in news anchors and news shows and various different outlets that they read and see, TV, internet, etc., because they have lost trust with Congress as a whole, because so many times it's easy to run, duck, and hide and not talk about the issues the way we need to talk about them, even if it's politically painful. We need to help educate and explain the other side of the coin rather than ducking and running and hiding. And that I believe is the responsibility of every member of the House and every Senate, to lay out the truth, even if it might be a little politically unpopular, because that's what we got to do in order to save the country. And you folks, the work that you do, the money that you provide, none of this can be achieved without your help. What they're doing at the Helms Center in terms of promotion of American values and the miracle of America and helping our young people to understand what makes this country great, it is so sorely needed. It is so sorely needed. I meet with students all the time, and they're so bright and they're so optimistic about the future, but yet at the same time, just like me, you know, when I was coming through school, I never really understood what a special place this was until I'm in a program in Prague, the Czech Republic, and I'm basically the only person there from America, and everybody else around me lived their entire life behind the Iron Curtain. I saw pretty quickly that there was a lot I didn't know. And that if you don't have your politics right, nothing else works very well either. So thank you for what you do. You're incredibly important to the future of the country. A lot of days we wake up and think, well, what does it matter? Let me tell you, everything matters. Everything matters. That extra dollar matters. That extra vote matters. As somebody who fell short by 655 votes out of 338,742 in the year 2012, I can tell you every vote matters. And so anyhow, thank you for what you do. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you, and God bless you.
David, I just want to say personally that I know that Dot and Jesse are looking down and they're smiling right now and they're proud as heck of you. Thank you.